guess.
Yeah.
Let's start with that. Stop sharing screen, and then you see my ugly face.
You're looking good. Andy, how are you?
I'm well, Roy. How are you?
You're in Canada, correct?
I am. We're in Montreal, Canada.
And you are the founder of Alphamantis, is it correct?
I am one of the founders of Alphamantis. I'm the aerodynamicist in the group.
And what is your work? You are talking about a lot of numbers, and with you I came first in contact with CdA. Could you please just explain a little bit what's your work and your...
Sure. We're quite trying to create an industry, and that industry consists of both teaching and measuring and performance improvement of the athlete.
Okay.
Where we've started is on aerodynamics. So I have to say before we begin, Roy, if there was no air on the planet, and we give you a scuba tank or something so you could breathe, there would be no limit to your upper speed, or just about. You would go thousands of kilometers an hour if you didn't have to push against the wind.
Okay.
So every additional molecule that you have to fight is slowing you down. And of course, your speed is going to be very different up high in the mountains than it is, down low in Death Valley, California, like below sea level. And people don't realize every day that air density can change by 4 or 5%.
Okay.
Constantly affecting how your performance is going to be.
That's why I like to ride so much. I love to ride in Boulder, high up on the mountains, because you have no resistance up on 2,000 meters above sea level. The resistance is much lower, but because you don't have enough air, it's kind of, balanced it out.
Well, so now when you hit 1 cubic meter of air, imagine 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter, down in sea level here in Montreal, it weighs about 1.19 kilograms. 1 cubic meter weighs that much, 1.19. So when you plow into this cube of air, you're plowing into almost 1.2 kilograms of air. When you're in Boulder, it's only 0.9 kilograms of air that you're plowing into.
At which altitude?
Well, let's say in Boulder.
At 1,600, huh?
Yeah. So it's significant. Now our bodies adjust, so we don't even feel it really, but there's definitely a big difference from day to day. Okay.
So that's about 30%. That's about 25% less, and about 6, 7, 8% less of oxygen. Okay.
Yeah, and usually that's a net gain in terms of speed. So you'll see, for example, in track cycling. A couple of years ago, I think in Aguascalientes, all the world records were broken in shorter events, where, of course, there wasn't as much of a metabolic penalty for lower oxygen.
So you think if you're going for a 1-hour record, you should go high altitude to do this?
Oh, there's no question. I did something with Alex Hutchinson of Sweat Science at Runner's World. And we analyzed a bunch of different tracks and where you would be better off. And higher than Aguascalientes would be probably bad, but definitely at 1,800 meters is still very, very good for a world hour record.
So the air is the weight of the air is less, and you still have enough oxygen to push the big wattage.
Yeah, it wouldn't be comfortable, I don't think. But there's now, I think, even a gentleman's agreement that most of them will be done around sea level.
Okay.
I think, because it'd be unfair to go and set those up so high.
Andy, one big question at the beginning is, there are many ways how you can measure aerodynamics. You can go to the wind tunnel. And I understood this week that if you go into the wind tunnel, because you have an advantage because you can stream the air like 15% from the left or from the right. You can play a little bit more compared to what we did with steps in Augsburg. So what is your recommendation if you want to find out about how to ride your bicycle in the most fast way, positioning, talking? What would you do if you were a pro athlete?
Well, I think both of them have just an advantage. Both of them see the world from a different perspective. In a wind tunnel, so when you're looking, let's say you're looking at the CdA, the needle on the CdA, there's no needle, but let's say there was. In a wind tunnel, that needle is very steady. And it's measuring very, very carefully really subtle changes. So if you change your hand, a little bit, it'll move a little bit. And the needle won't wiggle very much. The problem is you're on a bike that's clamped straight. And that's not how we ride our bikes. We ride our bikes with some lean and some steer. A little bit. And that little fishtailing changes the aerodynamics slightly.
Okay.
Now, when you go to the velodrome, you're maybe measuring the right number, but the needle is wiggling more. So this is the difference between precise but not accurate. The needle is straight, but it's not exactly the perfect thing that you're measuring, versus accurate but not precise, which is with the wiggling needle measuring the right thing.
Okay, so what you're saying is, if you're going to the velodrome, you do have a lot of air from the side because you can't really ride the bicycle all the way straight. You do have a little bit of side effect.
Yeah, a little bit. But it's part of the natural dynamics of the bicycle, part of the magic of the geometry of this machine, that it almost steers itself. And the part of the bicycle, and it's not by accident, that does this is called lean steer dynamics. The bike, all the fork angle and the wheelbase and where the center of gravity is, all is magically designed to naturally oscillate. When you lean a little bit, the bike will catch you.
Okay.
If you steer a little bit, the bike will lean to go and catch it. So all of these things magically work on a bicycle.
Okay.
And they need to be part of the equation of measuring.
Okay, got it. Okay, now if you can explain a little bit about your work, I'm very interested if you could share your screen and show what you do, because I'm just very surprised. Most triathletes just go and buy a fast bicycle, they buy a helmet, and they buy a suit, they start buying around. But what I just found out that the velodrome it's the combination who really makes the difference. This suit for me is different than another suit for another person, combined with this helmet, combined with this aero front wheel. It's like a big playing around, and what fascinates me, it's a chaotic, it's so chaotic, but at the end it's very, 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 how do you say, it's numbers, it's physique, so chaotic and physique, and this to combine, that's just a great field,
Absolutely. Well, but I mean, you're curious about it, so it really helps. It's extremely good. We always say every person is a unique biomechanical and aerodynamic puzzle that we have to solve. Everybody's unique. That's what's wonderful in a way. Well, it's great for business, right? Because all the solutions are very, very customized. But also, you may have advantages that other people don't have. Your power might not be as high, but you can get aerodynamic better than other people, or vice versa. It's all wonderful to see how individual we are.
Yes. But I was very disappointed to go back to my testing, because I really thought I found with my gut feeling, I found the right position. I was way wrong. I was too short, too low, and I was too suffering too much. And then Björn just made me stretch more, go higher, and boom, better numbers,
So you bring up a really good point. I think anybody can make you faster in a wind tunnel. And you just slam the person down and you stretch them out, and that's fine. But not everybody out there can make you faster.
Okay.
Faster means you're biomechanically comfortable. Your joint angles are all in the right sweet spot. You're able to perform good work, but at the same time, you're creating, you are optimized, or you're at least smaller. You're punching a smaller hole in the air.
Yeah.
it's very hard to balance those two.
Yes, and then, you know, Björn told me to put my back down to make my back more go down like this, so push my belly more down to my knees, and then kind of try to stretch my, and I was thinking, you know, we do all those crazy stretching, exercising in the pool, but we never do those right stretches that we actually would need for a great aerodynamic, you know?
Also, well, especially if you're working with UCI, but in general, glute engagement is very important. Mm-hmm. It's the biggest muscle in the body, and a lot of people leave out the work that can be done by the glutes. Mm-hmm. So that's all part of the equation.
Okay. Okay.
So, I've shared my screen.
Yeah, let's go. I see it. Fine. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So I just want to describe how a wind tunnel works, and then we're going to transition between how the wind tunnel works and how we work on the velodrome. So a wind tunnel has a big honking fan over on the right-hand side. That's a fan that's sucking air.
Yep.
A wind tunnel never blows air. It sucks air because the fan makes a lot of noise, a lot of wind noise, and so it's better at sucking air across the rider.
Okay.
So as you vary the RPMs of the fan, you change the airspeed. So on the left-hand side, there's usually a device, well, there's several pitot tubes that measure airspeed or the pressure loss or something. They have a way of calculating airspeed. Then there is a bicycle, usually with fork mounts, and it's on a sled. So the sled is free to move, but it's being held by a small piece with a strain gauge on it that can carefully measure the force that it takes to hold the sled from moving backwards against the wind.
Yeah.
So at the bottom, we see on the left side, we have usually a dial to measure airspeed. And on the right side, we have the green bar is the axial force, so the force front to back that's required to hold the sled in place. And sometimes there will also be the lateral force.
Yeah.
So as you turn the bike on the turntable in the wind tunnel, you'll start getting lateral forces.
Okay.
So that's how a wind tunnel works, and the equation is simple. The amount of force that it takes to hold the sled back is divided by velocity squared, so airspeed squared, is related to your aero coefficient of drag. So the more force it takes for a certain speed, the higher your aero coefficient of drag. So that's bad.
So just because I'm not, let me ask a question. That the point then is, because aerodynamics, I always think about going into the air. That's how I think, you know, go into the air. But what you just told me is more like how much force, how much, how do you call it in English, how much bubbles you create behind you that will determine how aerodynamic you are. Is this correct?
So that's exactly, behind is the key word. All the backward-facing surfaces on your body and on your bike, they all have the ability to create little vortices behind them. Every one of those little vortices is a negative pressure zone that sucks backward on you.
Okay.
So that's why we try to knife edge all the backward-facing surfaces. So the vortex behind isn't very big. And I'll explain this a little bit later on when we talk about texturing skin suits. So now let's undress the wind tunnel.
Yeah.
Let's turn it into a velodrome measurement system. So the first thing we do is we say we don't like fans. Let's get rid of the fan. And we're going to make the rider generate his own air by riding forwards. So if he rides at 30, 35 kilometers an hour, that's 35 kilometers of wind that's hitting him. So the next thing is instead of a little rod that's holding a sled from moving backward with a little strain gauge on it, we're going to replace that by the strain gauge that you find in your power meter.
Yeah.
Power meter either has force measuring crank arms, or you use a power meter in the hub, or some new ones are in the pedals. So there's whatever you do, ultimately, if it's a properly made power meter, there is a strain gauge that looks exactly like the strain gauge in the wind tunnel that measures force.
Mm-hmm.
So the next thing is instead of, it's very subtle, but down on the left-hand side, I quietly swapped airspeed for wheel speed, because on the velodrome, there is no wind, so the only wind speed you're getting is actually the wheel speed.
Mm-hmm.
So we've now measured the force, we've measured the wind resistance, and so now we can do exactly the same test.
Okay.
So in addition, though, we also have a special algorithm that looks at the geometry of the track, that takes your rider weight, and that makes small corrections to subtract off tire rolling resistance, and the fact that you're leaning and converting potential energy into kinetic energy on every turn.
Mm-hmm.
Every turn your speed goes up because you're leaning.
Yes.
And also because you're taking a shortcut compared to your wheels. So your wheels accelerate, try to keep up with you around the turn.
Mm-hmm.
So we account for all of that.
Okay.
So basically, we measured force and we measured airspeed just like a wind tunnel. And we do the same calculations that they do.
Mm-hmm.
So in the end, that's how equivalent the two ways are.
Okay.
So I told you I was going to talk to you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
How texturing lowers your aerodynamic drag. People always say like, well, how come like a really smooth shape isn't that going to be the most aerodynamic possible?
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, if that smooth shape is not an aerodynamic shape,
mm-hmm.
then sometimes it is advantageous to make it rougher. So to put a fabric over it, to use a longer sleeve on the upper arms. So let me show you what happens. With a smooth sphere, let's say we were looking at a smooth ball in an airflow.
Yeah.
That's the top photograph. And so the blue lines are the path of the air around this ball.
Yeah.
And because this first sphere is so smooth, the air right next to the flow, there's a little red line there. It is very orderly. All the molecules, they're not foaming up. They're just following the surface of the sphere, and the ones next to the surface of the sphere have neighbors one away, and those guys have one neighbor away. So when it comes time to make the turn around the sphere, they're a little bit stupid. They don't understand that the turn is coming because they can only talk to their neighbors. It's a smooth boundary layer. And so they make the turn at a very high point called the separation point. And it breaks away from the sphere. And behind, in the wake region, is a very large area of negative pressure that sucks on the sphere. And that's how drag is created. Because of this boundary layer that's smooth, we get a large wake region that is negative pressure.
So the wake region is like almost wider than the ball that you're showing, and it will stay for a while like that, and that's why it's kind of pulling the ball back.
Exactly. All of that is negative pressure on, look, almost 2/3 of the ball is negative pressure.
Okay.
So now down below, now let's take that sphere and let's add a little bit of roughness to it.
Mm-hmm.
what happens is that little thin boundary layer at the front of the sphere becomes a little bit foamy. It froths a little bit.
Okay.
And what happens is instead of each molecule talking to just their neighbor above and neighbor below, now it's like braided hair. You're talking to lots of molecules that are coming in and out of each other's neighborhood. And what happens is when it comes time to make the turn, you have advanced knowledge from more than just your neighbor. And so the molecules make the turn a little farther. You can see that the separation point of the lower diagram is much later than the separation point of the upper diagram.
Okay.
And so that wake region takes up a much smaller area of the ball. So it's sucking on it less. The negative pressure affects less of the ball.
Okay.
And so drag drops.
So that's the idea of a golf ball who has those little dots inside, you know.
Exactly. So for a long time now, when testing simple shapes that are blunt, aerodynamicists knew that if we measure coefficient of drag, remember the lower the better, measure the coefficient of drag of a blunt object, there's always something called a drag crisis. So if we look at the bottom, they call it a
drag crisis. I like it.
For a smooth sphere, that's a crisis.
I like it.
So for a smooth sphere, that's the solid line there. As we increase the speed, and then that number down below on the x-axis is called a Reynolds number, and it's a non-dimensional form of speed.
Okay.
So it's speed divided by viscosity, and anyway, it's basically it allows us to compare large objects to similarly scaled objects that are in slower flows. So as we increase the speed, we notice the solid line reaches a plateau at number 4 for a little while. And then suddenly we get this drop at Reynolds numbers of about 2 or 3 times 10 to the 5. We drop almost by a factor of 2 the amount of drag that the object has.
Okay.
And then as we increase the airspeed again, the drag goes up again. So what's interesting is that for the same airspeed, 30 miles an hour, the arm, the torso, and the thigh actually are, the way that Reynolds number is calculated, they're at different Reynolds numbers. So if you look now with a textured sphere, arms at 30 miles per hour, you actually see quite a significant drop of drag with the red dots,
yes,
going from smooth to rough. And then even more, the thigh at 30 miles an hour is just kind of the right size to take full advantage of the texturing. From smooth to rough, you see like quite a significant drop. And then past a certain speed, and for the torso, which is even bigger than the thigh, it doesn't matter anymore.
Okay.
The idea is the upper arm and the thigh are very critical in determining what textures we use.
Okay.
So we make use of this curve by basically shifting the smooth curve to the rough curve, the dashed curve, and trying to get as many elements to work well in terms of dropping drag. So that's why, like, even though you have 2 suits, they might look identical. If you look at the weave pattern of the difference of the suits, they're very different. In fact, most modern suits use 2 or 3 or even 4 different fabrics in different locations, and they modify the normal patterns that you'd use with a skin suit, so as to take full advantage of this texturing effect of drag.
Okay.
So that's sort of what I have to say about the drag crisis and how we use it to design suits.
And Andy, could you explain why you come up with those numbers 0.26, for example? I was a little bit shocked because my best result was in this testing like 0.26. That was it, you know. And I saw some other guys there, smaller, of course. They have lower values. So what can you tell? I mean, is it so that when you're taller that this number is higher? And do you find an athlete who you can say this guy would be optimal for time trialing because he's 170, short leg, small head or something? Is there a perfect body going through the air?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
Time trials, you're going to find there may not be a perfect body. There's a perfect ratio of the amount of power you generate divided by how aerodynamically efficient you are.
Mm-hmm.
So power divided by CdA, this number that we are measuring,
yes,
that's your number. So if you're generating, I don't know, 340 watts,
yes,
340 watts divided by your 0.26,
mm-hmm.
that number is, I should calculate it, hang on.
If you want, then you can show what I sent you. If you want to share this, the results of the test, that would be fine, because you are the one to, you know.
Thank you. This is very important data. I think very few people do this kind of careful test of that many suits. So I was really, I really appreciate that you shared it with me.
Of course.
We're going to be best buddies, you and me, Roy.
The Swiss suit was on last place, you know. That's the suit I raced last year. It's so funny, you know.
For you.
Yes, for me.
So here's the.
Yeah.
I don't know if you see it.
No, at the moment I don't.
I didn't share. Okay, just a minute. Technology.
No problem.
Screen. Start.
Yeah, it's working. It's working. Yeah, it's coming. Yeah, it's coming. Okay. So
resist. Okay.
So here we go.
So these are your magic results.
Yeah.
That no one ever does and no one ever shares. So again, thank you very much, Roy. That's awesome.
That's great.
So we were doing a calculation. Let's say 340 watts for you.
Mm-hmm.
Divided by your magic number, which was 0.2606.
Mm-hmm.
So 1304 is what's called your watts per CdA.
Okay.
So that number, so Chris Boardman, for example, was somewhere close to 2,000.
Jeez.
For the hour record.
Okay.
And different people, Alex Dowsett had a different way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
He was much more aero, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and produced a little more power.
Mm-hmm.
But all these people had one thing in common, is not that they had high power or that they had low CdA, but they had a high watts per CdA ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Different shapes, different sizes, but as long as you get the ratio right, it's a little bit like watts per kilogram. You know, there's different ways of getting to be a good climber.
Okay, but hold on, Andy. So let's say you have a CdA of 0.22, for example.
Yeah.
And you can ride 1 hour with 430 watts. What would be the number then?
Okay.
Could you show it to me?
Divide by 0.22. Let me calculate that.
Mm-hmm.
430, you say?
Yeah.
Divided by 0.22.
Yeah.
This isn't anybody we know.
Okay. No, yeah, it could. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so that number is spectacular.
Okay,
that is elite.
Okay.
Unbelievable.
Okay, so what I understand is now this number, Andy, determines the time that it takes for an athlete to go from A to B, correct?
On a flat course, yes.
So then it means you can either work on the CdA, going like crazy, really low,
Yep.
or train as hard as you can and push as many watts as you can. So those are the two directions you can go. And if you combine it all together, then you get a good high number. What's this number called?
This is watts per CdA, like watts per kilogram.
Watts per CdA, okay.
Power to weight.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
It's in fact, there are two numbers that uniquely belong to you. One is power to weight, which everyone knows, and the other is power to CdA. And with that, I can calculate how you'll do in all the races.
Okay. Okay, this is big time school. Here I'm learning a lot of stuff. So, but in general, what would you say? I mean, if you're looking at Tony Martin and other guys riding really fast, then it means more wattage will make you a bit faster combined to being very aerodynamic, correct?
Yeah, and it depends where you start, right? For most people, like gaining, 30 watts in a season is a big deal.
That's a big one.
For me, I want to gain 30 watts in a season, but I probably won't. But losing, let me see, 30 watts, let's say 10%. Losing 10% on CdA, if I've never been to a wind tunnel, is easy.
Okay.
Look, just changing skin suit. I mean, you lost a good, and you're dialed. You lost 0.01. You lost almost 8%. Just nothing changed. You're not a different person.
Yeah.
But now with the knowledge, you're a different person, and you're a person that is 8% faster.
It's amazing.
Well, if the baseline suit, let me see, from 0.27 to 0.26, that's 4%. So let's be fair.
Yeah.
Let's 4% on your power, 4% on 340 watts. I am picking on you as being 340 because that's just my guess. But that's 13 watts.
Yeah.
You can do that too, and then you'll gain 8%.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really, I really like to share this information out to the triathletes to get, to tell them, hey, it's very important that you are trying to look at the whole picture of your effort of training. If you're training, that's fine, but let's find a position on a bicycle that will put those wattage that you produce into a nice form so that you can be fast. That's going to be the key. That's going to be, for age group athletes in the future, the key, not to train like crazy, but also to find a position that you can still run fast after and have a good CdA. So,
and cycling is like doing repeated squats.
Yeah.
It's a good analogy for what we do when we do bike positioning. So you can do, if I ask you to do as many squats as possible with as much weight as possible. And unfortunately, I make you do it almost down on the ground and only for like 10 centimeters. And that's you're all low, and you're only using the bottom, sort of a bad range of all of your joints. Or if I ask you to do it too high, where you're only using like the last 4 degrees of your knee bend and of your hip angle. These are bad positions. We see people in the equivalent bad positions for cycling. So now if I say, okay, you're going to go up and down, 172.5 millimeters. That's the length of a crank. You're going to go up and down, but I'm going to pick exactly the right height for you to go up and down. Well, you can do a lot of reps.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of weight. So cycling is the same thing. First, you need to get into a good biomechanical position. And fortunately, us aerodynamicists, we have a very bad reputation in terms of harming the biomechanics of cyclists.
Yes.
So we always work with the very best positioning coaches.
Yes, it's very important. If you study a little bit the running times in Hawaii, for example, you can see that the bicycle times really got fast in the last few years, but the running time never got to the point where they used to be, like low 240s. They're running 250s and more, but riding really fast. So there is a price if you are sitting too aerodynamic on the bicycle for the running. That's what I found. So,
okay. So I thought so too. But in the last probably year and a half, I've been experimenting with different strategies.
Yes.
As your back angle goes lower and lower, the big problem is getting over the top of your pedal stroke.
Can you show this? Can you share this on the screen a little bit with a drawing or something that we can understand?
Sure, absolutely. Okay. So unfortunately, you're going to have to live with my drawing.
No problem.
But you can do it.
No problem. So what you're saying is you don't agree. You still think if you're going all the way, that you can ride, you can be very, very aerodynamic and not suffer on the run?
Let me show you what I know. And it's not true for everybody, but we're starting to get some good luck with it.
Okay.
Especially with what was nice was that Lionel Sanders was very open to trying new things. And so that worked out really, really well. Okay, here. This is what I'm looking for. I'm just going to share my screen.
Very good. Doing good.
I am sharing my screen. Thank you. All right. So let me also pick a brush that's a little smaller. Told you I would test your patience.
Of course, I am. Patience is endurance, you know.
Yeah, it's good for you. All right. So now we have a brush that's a good size. Okay. So here's your back angle.
Yeah.
Here's your femur. Here's your tibia.
Yeah.
And here's your foot.
Yeah.
So here's a position.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily good or bad, but at the top of the pedal stroke, let's say at the top of the pedal stroke, you're going to be looking at a situation like this.
Yeah, got it.
And you're going to have an angle right here that if you're not very aero, if your back angle is fine, this I don't know what angle this is, but it's like 35 degrees. There's no problem. The leftover angle here at the top of the pedal stroke is not a problem at all.
Yeah.
I'm so ugly on the bike that I don't really care about the top of my pedal stroke. But as you begin to lower the back more and more to want to be more aero,
yes,
the top of the pedal stroke becomes more and more pinched at the hip.
Yeah. That's what I felt. That's what I felt when Björn told me, Roy, lower your lower back. Then my belly was kind of, touching my legs.
Yeah. So what we've been experimenting with lately is as we bring you lower, the aerodynamics is excellent, but you get tremendous fatigue in the hip flexor. And that fatigue probably affects your running more than anything.
Okay.
Hip flexor fatigue from too low a back angle or too low a hip angle at the top of the pedal stroke. So our solution for this is to use a smaller crank.
Okay.
And all of the science supports the fact that once you get used to it, and for some people it's easy, for some people it takes a little more work. Once you get used to it, you can create the same amount of energy in one pedal stroke, no matter what the size of the crank.
Okay.
And what it does is it suddenly opens up this angle. Because the top of the pedal stroke, you're not going as high.
Yeah.
And suddenly, all the hip flexor discomfort that you get from trying to go with a lower back angle is not there anymore.
So you're talking about 165 crank arm length and stuff like this?
Well, again, it depends on the person. So Lionel Sanders, who's won, I think, the first 4 races of the season now, he's now on 165s, and he was on the standard 172.5s.
And
but as we brought his back down more and more, there was less and less space for the hip angle at the top of the stroke, and he was weak. On the whole top half of his pedal stroke was weak. Right? If you can't generate power all here at the top,
yes.
from one leg,
yes.
if it's actually negative power that you're creating,
yes.
you need to fix this problem.
Yes, that's true. Andy, do you know by chance, I'm riding Biomag, that's a shoe with the middle foot pedal system. So my pedal is in the middle of the foot.
Yep.
Do you know how this affects the positioning that you have just talked about? Is it going into the right direction or wrong direction? Do you know this?
You know what? I haven't thought of the implication of mid-foot cleat position.
Because what I know for a fact is that I'm sitting like 1.5 centimeters lower on the bicycle because I'm middle foot. I use my cleats on the middle foot. That is, the distance from the saddle to the pedal is less. So I'm sitting lower.
Okay, but the one that I'm most concerned about, or that I worry most about, is that that's because the bottom of the pedal stroke straightens your leg out a little more, so you have to lower your saddle.
Exactly.
But now the top, maybe you're right. It doesn't affect the top of the pedal stroke quite as much.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing can help as much as shortening cranks for this hip angle.
Okay.
Can usually knock a couple of degrees off a back angle.
Mm-hmm.
So remember, here I'll use the same color. Remember that the aerodynamic cost of this big negative pressure zone back here decreases significantly. You're actually moving the bubble to back here for this back angle.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to being huge for this back angle. So every degree really helps. And of course, depending on the helmet and the transition, how the air transitions, if it can manage to stay attached longer, then it is a direction. I'm not saying that this will work for everybody. I'm not saying that it's a magic cure for all aerodynamic and biomechanical problems. But I am saying for a few people, they don't ever want to go back to 172.5 now that they've tasted what a really strong position and good aerodynamics is.
Okay, got the point. I have a question. I need some goals. When you look, I'm like 187 centimeters and I am 77 kilos. What would be a good CdA value that, after going back and back and back to the... Hold on a second.
Yep.
Hold on a second. Josef, ich komme gerade, ich bin noch beschäftigt. Bis nachher, komme gerade. Komme. What would be a good value for me to reach? Let's say if I'm going back to steps and we work and do the stuff with the crank arm and so on. And what would be a value that I can go for? I need a goal. Can you set this goal? Are you there?
I am.
Okay. Sorry, Andy. What would be a good number for me? Like 187. I'm like 6.2, 77 kilos. What would be a good value that's with a nice bicycle that I should reach? What should be my goal if I can go back to steps and work more loops and do that stuff? What's going to be a good one that you say, okay, you can be happy with that?
Well, 0.26 is pretty good.
Okay.
I think especially with steps, you've got, if you had the ability to have a bicycle that allowed them to completely test all of the positional points. Is this for triathlon?
Yes, that's for triathlon.
So Ironman?
No, it would be for an Olympic distance race.
Okay. Is it Olympic distance?
It's like 25-mile flat.
Drop handlebars?
Yes.
regular ITU, right?
Yeah.
So their 0.26 isn't too bad. But I think if you could hit 2.4, and I could say that I probably haven't seen too many people, your size, that are in drop bars that are much lower than that. There are a few, but I think that you probably generate more power than the ones with lower CdAs. Because
it was like surprising. This one other guy that came, he was like 10 kilos lighter, maybe half a head smaller, but he moved in with like 2.25. That's how he arrived,
Yeah, and sometimes you can luck into it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people come in varying degrees of aerodynamic optimization. Some of them are accidental, some of them because it somehow felt right to them, or they had a good positioning coach that also knew aero. But it's a process. You know? The most important thing is you can't expect to go one time and that it's going to be the final thing. It's a little bit like air traffic control. Your bike fitter needs some time to understand the airspace around you, how your body reacts aerodynamically, how you react biomechanically. You may try something that maybe will take you 2 or 3 weeks to evaluate whether it's a good direction. And you go back to your fitter and your aero tester and you try a few more positions. On the Canadian national team, we have a couple of women from way back in the 2012 Olympics. Who have by now been aero tested 9 or 10 times. Let me kill that. 9 or 10 times. And each time there was nothing spectacular that we found. But after all those tests, sometimes we go 6 or 8 months, couldn't really think of new directions, and then all of a sudden, hey, why don't we try this?
And then boom, you have it. See, the boom I don't have yet. I don't have the boom yet. I know that my feelings and my ideas about aerodynamics, just from a gut feeling, were wrong. I know it now.
Okay.
And that's a good knowledge. With that knowledge, I can build the knowledge, what is really fast, not what I think is fast.
Well, Roy, see, every time I make a prediction about something, every single time,
it's wrong.
I am completely humiliated. So the first thing you have to learn is you have to kind of shake loose any thinking about what's going to happen. The arrow will take you where it needs to take you. Yeah,
it's absolutely true. Björn asked me, and how you feel? I said, yes, it felt much faster. Opposite, much slower. It's crazy. You can't really feel it too. It's an amazing field. I will do more research on this. Okay, and I'm not happy with 0.26. I'm not happy yet. Okay.
But that's good. You'll never be happy, which is wonderful. You and I, Roy, and with Staps, we can work together and find some interesting solutions.
Yeah, we'll do. So
we'll never find the last one, I guarantee you.
But I have to go back there. I think I will go back in November. I will take some guys of my coaching with me, some new ones, and then I will try again.
Let me know. Maybe I can join you.
Okay, that would be great. Okay, Andy, thank you for your time.
Roy, thank you so much.
Greetings to Canada, and I hope to see you in real one day.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Good. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.